Hi, Rancho del Lago 2021, and I'm CheryLynn. Welcome back. This is going to be a short video today because I've had so much to do, and tomorrow I go in to have eye surgery for cataracts. First this one, then that one in the week after. But I'm trying to cram a lot together. After you have cataract surgery, you're not supposed to do any bending over or lifting anything heavy for at least several days. So I have to prepare and get a lot of things done in advance. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been going on because of the chaos and insanity happening in the U.S. I continue to have people contact me asking me about moving to Mexico, about living in Mexico, about the culture here, what could they find as far as a home, as far as property, as far as land to do what I'm doing and, start a little homestead. What about building? What about construction? I mean, I'm just getting a plethora of questions. And I have answers to most of them, but I can't make decisions for everyone. I can only tell them what it's like, what I did, relate my own experiences and that kind of thing. I'm going to do some videos on a lot of these things individually, but right now I want to touch a little bit on land. Of course, if you're going to buy a house, land comes with it. But some people are just interested in buying land so that they can build something of their own, even if it's buying a lot in one of the towns so that they can build a home. Now, I have some earlier videos on talking with an architect and getting lots of answers to questions on 10 things I wish I had known before I built my home, on don't make these mistakes that I made. So you really should go back and take a look at those videos as well. But I want to explain a little bit about land here in Mexico because it is very different than in the US. And I can't speak for Canada because I've never checked into that. But here you have land that is within a certain distance of the coast. You have land which is inland, which can be owned outright by individuals. You have land, usually inland, but can also be on the coast, that is owned by what's called the ejido, E-J-I-D-O, ejido. What that means is that generations and generations of families have owned pieces of property. And during those generations, couple number one has 10 children, and each of those children have 5 to 8 children, and each of those children have 3 to 6 children, and you can see what I mean. The family tree is becoming huge. Well, that particular piece of property, then in getting handed down, could very well belong to 10 people or 1,000 people. What has happened is that something called the Ejido Council has taken over basically management of these properties. They can't be sold because they would have to contact 1,000 different people and get permission. They are usually leased out to one of the descendants to work on an agricultural level. And the descendants don't on their own have the right to sell that property either, or even rent it. But I know people who rent for purposes of maybe keeping livestock there, or maybe growing something there. And that's okay as long as it's approved through the council. But you cannot buy and build on that kind of property unless you go for a very long procedure through the ejido to get permission for that. And your purchase then goes through the ejido because of the numerous people then need to be contacted. It's a whole nother thing. I am not an attorney. I am not anybody who can give you legal advice on it. I'm just kind of giving you the basic understanding of how it works. The property that I purchased was outright owned by someone, and even then, because it was zoned agriculture and not residential, we're jumping through hoops, and it's taking a very long time to get it changed over to residential, even though I've already built the house and I already live here. So there's a whole lot that goes into buying land correctly, and you definitely want to do it correctly, because here there are no title companies, no closing companies for you in that respect, like in the US, where the title company takes on the responsibility after they have checked and verified that it's a clean title. So it's just a whole nother world. You have to be very careful, and I highly recommend that you work with a legitimate, skilled, trained, and certified real estate agent here that deals in tracts of land. The realtor's requirements here are far simpler than in the US. They aren't as accountable or responsible for giving the correct information. So again, with someone who is well recommended and has a very, very good reputation, that's who you want to work with. As far as the legal side of it, there are attorneys, but unlike in the US, the attorney here is kind of on the lower end of the totem pole, and up from that is the person called the notario, which is strange because in the US, a notary is someone who simply verifies signatures and puts a stamp on paper, but here it's like the step up from the attorney, someone who's more schooled, someone who has longer experience, someone who is appointed by the government to be in that position. So you need to know who does what, who's responsible and accountable for what kind of land is available to you to purchase. All of those things, a really good land realtor will help you with. So now that we've got that part out of the way, if you have more questions on that, if you need to speak to someone on that, you can leave it in comments and I will get back to you, because there are people that I know and trust and I could recommend to you to try. Now, some of these people I know on an outside of business basis, but I know that they have good reputations even if I have not used them for that purpose. So again, all of my recommendations come only because I know someone, I know their reputation, I may know someone else who has worked with them. That's it. No guarantees, no liabilities. I can only recommend you have to make your decisions. Now, I am going to tell you a couple of fun things about living here. Well, one fun thing, one kind of not so fun thing about living here in the country, and things that can happen whenever. I was on my driveway looking out at my goat yard and glanced across the field and saw a couple of horses just munching away on a plot of grass, which normally would be no big deal. And it really wasn't, because here, farmers and ranchers often have animals that get loose or that they purposely let loose so that they can go graze along roadsides. Now, if you don't have enough pasture and you want your animals to graze, I found this out when I was driving to Mexico the very first time. There were herds of goats and sheep and cows just walking up and down the sides of the roads, and sometimes crossing the road to eat the grass in the median if there was one. Well, here I am in the country. I say in the country. It takes me 5 minutes to get into town to the grocery store, but I am in a rural, I hate that word, rural area. So anything you see is not abnormal. So these two horses were over there, and oftentimes my dogs will bark, and I'll look outside, and maybe 2, maybe 4, maybe even 8 or 10 horses are just wandering down my dirt road, finding a place to munch. And the same thing with cows. And I go out there and shoo them along. Last night, though, this was a first. My dogs were going crazy. And it was just at that point of dark where the last light is almost gone. They were going insane all over the driveway. And now my whole property is fenced in with chain link, and then there are many sections within that property that are also chain linked. Well, the dogs were out on the driveway section, and there is only one gate going out to the road from there. So I saw my goats, which are on the opposite side of the driveway from my house, in a large chain link fenced yard. And they were all huddled up together and staring out at the road, which is unusual because normally cows and horses and people don't catch their attention at all, unless it's a family with little kids who brought food for the goats. Then they notice. So I thought, well, this is really odd. So I turned on all the lights that I had available, and I walked down the driveway to the gate and looked out there. And there was a big, fat pig who was just wandering up the road, saw my goats, heard my dogs, and just said to itself, "This is just too much commotion." Pulled up its legs, sat down its body, and just plopped on the ground to rest. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it was going. I don't know who it belonged to. But this big, big black and white pig. I will eventually find out from my neighbors whose pig it was, but I called one of my neighbors, a Mexican man who sold me the property, and I said, "Do you know anybody here who raises pigs? Because there's one right out in the road by my driveway." Well, he had a couple of guesses, but my son had my car out, so I couldn't get in the car and, go down to somebody's house to check. What we do, we just figure, well, somebody's going to come along the road, somebody's going to see it, take it home, or the pig will turn around and go home, or the owners will go find it. And that's the way it works out here. It's unusual, but it's never boring. Now, one last little note. I am incubating eggs. I mentioned that in an earlier video. This is my first time. I bought an incubator so that I could start raising more ducks and geese and turkeys. Well, my problem with the geese and turkeys right now is that I have 2 female geese and 3 female turkeys, so that's not going to work. As soon as we're able to get a male of each, then I will have fertilized eggs and I will start incubating those as well. My intent is to sell them for meat, like we do our goats and rabbits. But I'm incubating, started out with 10 eggs. Now, just a few days into the incubation process, I accidentally cracked one of the eggs, and so I had to remove it. So the other 9 have been rolling. Now this incubator has little rollers on the bottom, and it rolls the eggs. Every 90 minutes, it rolls a little fraction, a little fraction. It's got a humidifier in there, so it gives them humidity. I watch it. I make sure that the eggs aren't getting too crowded, because as it rolls, they kind of move a little bit. And so I've been watching now. Generally, it's 28 days to hatch. So I have been watching now for about 23 days, 24 days, something like that. Well, it has a little thing on the top of the incubator so that you can candle the eggs and see through the shells inside. Well, I'm doing duck eggs, and duck egg shells are very thick, so it's harder to see. Well, you're supposed to be able to see kind of a pinkish background with little veins in it and things like that. I can't see anything like that. In fact, I see a big spot on the end of it where it looks like there is nothing, like it's real dark up here, and then there's a little spot down here on the bottom where it's nothing. So I figured, well, you know, maybe I botched it. Maybe my 9 eggs are just gonna fizzle. Well, in doing the candling, I accidentally bumped one egg into another egg a little hard by accident, and it cracked. Well, if the shell is cracked, it's not going to be a hatchable egg. So I decided to go ahead and crack it open because all of them look the same. Crack it open to see, am I wasting my time? Do I need to pitch this batch out and start with another batch or what? So I cracked open the shell, and darn, there's a little baby duckling in there. Too far away from hatching to be able to save. But at least I know that just because I didn't see the pink and the veins and the whatnot doesn't mean that the other 8 eggs aren't potentially going to become ducklings. I felt really, really bad. I always cry when something dies and it's not supposed to. And, but it did teach me what to look for. And that's generally the way it works on a homestead. Things are trial and error. Things are learned from other people. Things are learned from mistakes. We all do it. It's just a part of life on the homestead. So I lost one little baby duckling to my error of breaking an egg by accident. But I look forward. Now I've got, I think, just 4 more days. I think 3 or 4 more days at the most, and they should start hatching. So I will report back and let you know how they do when the hatching actually starts taking place. That's what I've got for you today. I'm sorry it was not as information-packed as normal. I promise the next one will be, and I'll actually be able to see a little bit better after this eye is done, because it's the worst one, and we'll go from there. So thank you again for watching. Blessings to you on anything you choose, and please leave me comments if you have questions about moving here, anything about here, homesteading here, what I do, any of that. I'm happy to answer as I am able.